Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Teach Middle East podcast. This is Lisa Grace, and I'm with Thomas Blakemore, who is a teacher and a content creator here in Dubai, in the UAE. And we're going to chat all things content creation. We're going to talk about balancing teaching, which is a full-time job and a full-on job, along with his content creation work that he does outside of school. And we're going to also talk about his journey as an educator, what led him to Dubai, what led him to the Middle East, and how he's finding it. So welcome, Thomas.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me on and taking the time out of your day to do this podcast and interview me.
Yes, it's been my pleasure. You know what? I've watched a couple of your videos, especially the one you did at Expo recently.
Yeah.
And I love the quality. I love how you chat things up and how you show real highlights of what you're doing and what's happening. And I think that's very useful, especially for teachers who are considering a move to this part of the world.
Yeah.
It's so relatable, right? Because they want to see what's going on and how teachers spend their time. So I'm sure that you must get lots of comments and lots of feedback from people who are on their way to this part of the world and want to know what it's like to live here.
I do, yeah, absolutely. I think part of the reason why I started content creation all about teaching in Dubai is because when I undertook the process of trying to find out about Dubai, there were maybe a couple of videos and not a huge amount of information, and the information that was available wasn't necessarily available to talk about British education. It was more English, ESL, that sort of content, which didn't suit me. So I suppose that's one of the reasons why I started creating for international educators thinking about coming to Dubai, and from there then just continued with that.
Brilliant. So I'm going to take it back and talk about your journey as a teacher. Why did you become a teacher?
So I made a video about this once upon a time. I didn't want to be a teacher, believe it or not. I've not got this fairy tale. I've always wanted to be a teacher. My mum, who was a teacher, she's a music teacher, teaches in all sorts of different schools. And I saw the hours that she put in and how hard it was. And I thought, nah, not doing that. That sounds like that's not something I'm going to enjoy. But as I went to college, I started swimming teaching, and I started doing lots of different applications to become a paramedic, a police officer, a firefighter. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I did want to help people. And as I was at college, I was swimming teaching, and I was writing out an application form. You do the university application forms for, I was writing it to become an occupation department practitioner. I think it's something to do with operations. I didn't really know, to be honest. I just thought, that sounds good. Pay sounds good. And then I was writing it out, realized I didn't have a clue. So I had this huge, it wasn't even a quarter life crisis. It was a bit of an existential crisis. And I went, nah, what am I going to do? And I thought about what I enjoyed and what my values were, which were, to try and provide and help in society. And I did enjoy teaching. So I thought, I'll try going into a primary school. It was easy enough because my mum had links to primary schools to go and volunteer in one. And I sort of fell in love with the process, of being in front of a class. And it's been a journey that I've followed ever since.
That's brilliant. I love honesty. I often get the teachers who said, from I was in primary school, I know I wanted to be a teacher and I followed my dream. And that's nice if it's true. But if it isn't, then, it's still nice that you found your way into a profession that you love and that you're enjoying. So how long did you teach in the UK before you made your international move?
So I taught in the UK for 2 years. It was 2 hard years, don't get me wrong, but 2 years in the UK, and that was what gave me the idea of starting YouTube and all those different things, which I'm sure we'll get onto later on. But 2 years in the UK, I taught year 5, 6 to start off with in my NQT year, an absolutely bonkers class, 33 children, high need, in a school where there was a high English as an additional language proportion as well. It was just really challenging upward curve, but I learned so much through that year. And then I got promoted to just year 6. But it was just going from that year 5, 6 and then having just SATs and all those different things. So that was good too in my RQT year. And then from there, I felt ready to, I was at an age where I felt ready to move abroad to gain independence and all those different things too.
I can't imagine a school giving an NQT a year 5-6 split. God, that's tough.
Yeah, it was just one of those, but I was blessed at the same time where they felt they could trust me with that class. It was challenging. I had an amazing TA. In fact, I've always had an amazing TA, to be fair. But it was definitely something that I learned a huge amount. I think that was my biggest year in terms of learning as a
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah. So you did your 2 years, hard graft.
Hard
Then
graft.
and then you decided to step out of your comfort zone, so to speak, and make that move abroad. But why Dubai? Why Dubai?
I think I always had Dubai in the back of my head. And it wasn't until my RQT year, that second year of teaching, where I even got a chance to go and visit Dubai. I think I had Dubai in my head because of the weather climate. I had the opportunity to work internationally when I was at university. I worked for Walt Disney World in Orlando, which was unbelievable. But it was that sunny climate, and I really thrived in that sort of place. So I thought about where I could teach internationally, where it would have those opportunities to go and travel to new places, but also have quite a similar education style at the same time. And Dubai ticked off lots of different things that I had on my list in terms of, like I said, with the travel, the wages, which does take a huge factor for me as well. Although this can happen in different countries, the accommodation provision at a time where perhaps I didn't have things for my own accommodation. So I didn't have, deposits on houses and things like that. So it ticked off. When I looked at the things I wanted, it ticked off lots of things on that list, really.
Yeah. And how long have you been out here?
This is my 4th year now.
Wow. Are you going to be a lifer? They have those of us who never leave. Are you one of those?
It's one I think I've always, as I'm here longer and longer, my attachment to home continues. Missing family continues, especially during the pandemic, which we're in. The color green, which sounds silly, I think maybe this is something to do with the lack of travel, but the lack of green as well. So is a move home on the horizons? Potentially, not immediately, but definitely I wouldn't say I'm going to be a lifer, as you call it.
Yeah, and you know what? There are those of us who've come out here for 2 years, and then we said, okay, 5 years, 4 years, 6 years, and 10 years later, we're still here, and we're like, okay, when are we going back? And we don't have a date, and so we just consider it. Listen, we go back when we go back. But there are others who move to other countries and explore the world a little bit more. So, you might not be a lifer here in the UAE, but potentially you could move to somewhere else and continue your journey of teaching internationally.
Yeah, it's certainly an option. Maybe a country closer to home that still has that sunny weather. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I've gone.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just to say I've gone through a phase in my life of just sort of going up to a certain level and achieving what I wanted to in terms of teaching in Dubai, and I'm just kind of in a happy place, which is good.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. So the topic of this podcast is how a teacher like yourself can also become a content creator and manage to do both. When did you start creating content on YouTube? And what made you start creating content on YouTube?
There's a whole story about why I started. There's a number of different reasons as to why I started. When I was at university, I really enjoyed watching YouTube videos. It was something that kept me going through the long marking hours and all those sorts of things. But as I started at school and had those different things going on, I had my class who were also absolutely in love with YouTube. And I could kind of understand what they were enjoying and stuff like that. Until one day a child asked, "Mr. Blakemore, are you a Maverick or a Jake Pauler?" And I was like, what? I didn't know. Didn't know what these things were, but it turned out it was this Jake Paul and Logan Paul. And my class were obsessed with those two people. And I wanted to know, those guys, Jake and Logan Paul, are the same age as me. I wanted to know what it was that my class found so exciting about them. So if I could steal like 1% of whatever they find addictive about those, then maybe they could engage with my lesson content a little bit more. So I started watching those guys. I started, trying to understand the process, and I learned a few different valuable things from them, such as the importance of community, such as the importance of a good hook. But then from there, I came in one day and I knew there was a video that wasn't appropriate, and it was the Logan Paul one where he went to a certain forest in Japan. I see you're nodding your head. To those listening on podcast, I suppose it's how can I phrase this in a non-potentially haram way? It's a self-harm forest. It's one of those places. And unfortunately, he went with the intention of not finding trees, let's say that. And he
Right.
found things that weren't trees. And he decided to share that online. But my class had seen that. And I realized that at that time, that wasn't the right thing for them to be saying. So I decided that I already had this idea that I wanted to share travel stories and things like that in my mind. For me, that was a great opportunity to start sharing those videos, because even if my videos were terrible, at least for 10 minutes a day, they would laugh at me instead of watching some of those videos that could potentially be inappropriate and then potentially be a bit of a role model. And then that other reason of wanting to start YouTube was also a little bit selfish. I wanted to have a little bit of an escape and wanted to create at the same time and just, have that creative outlet. So all sorts of different reasons.
Yeah, but you know what it is as well with those guys, they get to a level where the students follow them irrespective of what the content is. And I don't know if they realize the age of the kids who are watching them and the damage that they could potentially do. So you wanted to counter some of that, and you wanted to share your stories. How did you go about starting? So for teachers who are listening and thinking, you know what, I want to start. How did you go about doing that?
I overthought the process for a long time, but eventually it came down to a decision of YOLO, that you only live once. You just got to kind of go for it. You're going to have those people who either A, don't understand, or B, get jealous. And when I first started creating, there were those people who A, didn't understand and laughed at the things that I was saying online. Why are you saying teach travel triumph? Why, teach travel Trump? That's hilarious. No, we're 30 guys. But you also get those people who are a little bit envious and jealous and also make those negative comments. And that is, regardless of what you start, whether it's content creation, whether it's a magazine like yourself, you're going to get those people who don't understand or are jealous. For me, it was a process of exploration. I didn't know anything media related. I used to be the person who would question people taking media as an option of a GCSE or A level. But it turns out I wish I had done media, So for me, it was just a case of, you only live once. I'm only going to end up having that, I should have, I would have. And I started creating content, and I learned how to edit and film as I went. I overthought the process and thought that I needed all this gear, this camera gear, this lighting equipment, all these different accessories, and I bought a lot of it. But when you look back at the footage, it's really clear that I didn't understand the things that I was using. And I could have just started on something simple, like a GoPro or a phone or something. So I'm hoping that within that sort of story, there's a few different tips.
So I got a few tips. You only live once. Start. And it doesn't really matter what the comments are, because you can't avoid them anyway. So you might as well just do what you want to do, because somebody is going to either be jealous or they're just not going to understand exactly what your purpose or motives are. And they're going to make the comments they want to make. So ignore them.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that purpose and motive, that's so important. And, I talked about my why being to help people. I find now that things have grown since I started, I still need to reflect on that why. So find your why of why you want to create things. If it's to reach a certain amount of subscribers, or whether it's to reach a certain numerical number of whatever that is, then rethink about your philosophical why, because numbers always grow. You can never, when you get to 10,000, you want to get to 100,000. When you get to 100, you want to get to 1,000. Numbers always grow. So think about your why first.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to create. It will really help with the content creation process. And as you start as well, build on processes. Process is really crucial. It's less about the outcome initially. It's more about building the process. So
right.
I know when I spoke to you at Guess, I spoke about the importance of having a set day where I sit down and edit the video that's going to release.
Yeah. We're gonna dive into that, because I'm curious as to how often you actually upload and how you balance that with your teaching load, because teaching is a very full-on job. So let us in on that one.
Okay, so there's a number of things. I've had this question once on a podcast before, and I simply said, like, I don't manage it. But now that I've had a chance more to reflect on the process that I have undergone, like, I think that was perhaps a little bit naive of myself, and didn't really give myself enough of praise or recognition of the things that I have done, because I hadn't heard of the process, the productivity processes that I have in place. So I've discovered that I do something called time blocking. I didn't know it was called time blocking, but that is an example of me setting aside a certain amount of time on a Sunday where I edit. I also have a certain amount of time on a Friday where I will set up my studio or wherever I'm going to film. So that's an example of time blocking. I bulk things as well. That's a prime example of things that I do to ensure that I'm able to reply to comments, whether it's replying to DMs and making sure that I'm able to do that. I also have lots of different, like, shortcutty things that I've learned along the process. I think one of the biggest challenges is that, I suppose it goes back to my NQT year. I said about my NQT year being extremely challenging. It's because you're learning everything for the first time. When I started YouTube, you're learning everything for the first time and you don't quite understand everything. But eventually, like I said, work on the process, you start to learn, okay, this is what I need to do when I'm editing a video, and I'll have templates so that I can drag and drop any of the overlays and things like that in place. So although there's a huge initial margin for error and challenge initially, those things, a bit like becoming an NQT and RQT and so on, it gets easier. It slowly gets easier, and you are able to do the things a little bit quicker. And I know now, instead of taking, my first videos used to take me a good 10 hours because of the software that I was using and everything that I was learning. Now I've got that process really shrunk down to about 2 hours of edit, 2-3 hours of editing. And then there's that upload period. There's all sorts of other different bits and pieces that go on after that process, but it's really shrunk down from there. I think the one challenge that I have with creating content is that it needs to go back to the why. So when I create content, it can be initially, if I've had a bad day at school, for example, all I want to do is come home, have some food, can't really be bothered to cook, even though that's something I really enjoy, and sit down. But if it's a Sunday, I can't do it. So there's that accountability to the process that you have in place. I have to think about, right, even though, initially you don't have that audience, you've got to be accountable and consistent with that process. So you've got to think that somewhere in the world, and for me, it really helped having, right, my class are going to watch, someone from my class is going to watch this video and they're going to expect it on a Sunday, for example. So I could go, right, someone somewhere is waiting for this helpful video and they might be disappointed if that comes out. There's also a reverse side. There's a negative side of that where you kind of got to also have the opportunity to have a break, because you can't always think like that. You can't always think that by you not creating X that people are going to be disappointed, because that puts a huge pressure on you and can have a negative impact mentally too. So there is a balance there as well, but that consistency to yourself and that commitment to yourself is helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like I've waffled a lot.
No. You've given us some useful information in there. And one of the key things is that you have to be accountable to yourself. Even if you don't have the audience that you want to have at the time, if you even have one person who's counting on your video or your content, then it is definitely worth doing. I wanted to kind of go back to something you said about your process. So you've shrunk it down to 2 to 3 hours of editing. What do you use? Where do you start? Is it that you film 1 or 2 videos and then you edit them all at the same time? And so you've got a batch of 3 ready to go over another 3 weeks, or do you do them week by week? How do you do them exactly?
I wish I batched them. I don't quite have the mental capacity in the working week to batch them. Sometimes I can have, so let's say I've got 1 or 2, I'll film. I always like to have what I call one in the bank. And what that means is I always like to have an extra video just in case there's, you've got parents' evening reports, all those sorts of things like I've just had, where all of a sudden I haven't had a chance to film on a Friday because I've been doing reports. So I like to have what I call one in the bank, where it's an evergreen video, which is basically like evergreen content is something that will last for a long time. It doesn't matter what that content's about, whether it's, if I'm making a video about seesaw updates, that's only relevant for a certain amount of time. So that's not an evergreen one in the bank video. But if it's something like public speaking ideas or teaching ideas, whatever it is, then having that one in the bank means that I've got something to fall back on. So that's, I suppose, something that helps. In terms of the editing process, I use Final Cut Pro, and that on the right hardware as well, that on my MacBook Pro, for example, is really supportive because it means that I'm able to do things more efficiently. When you're first starting out, though, you don't need that. You don't need that, and you can. If I'd known about it, I'd have just used my mobile with appropriate software because that can just be as quick, and it can also save you time and money, which is also something that isn't really spoken about too. Yeah, so it's that, and reducing that time as well. I've also got checklists, certain things that I have to get in when I'm releasing a video so that I don't miss, especially on a Sunday, that first Sunday, you're tired, you've come back from a long day of school. I've got to make sure that I've got some sort of checklist, right? So I've included my timestamps, I've included the thumbnail, I've included this in the description, I've thought about this when I'm editing, all these different things so that my mental fatigue doesn't become a reason why the outcome of the video is not the best.
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of educators should create content. How has creating content helped you as an educator?
It helps me understand the platforms that the children use. I've started using TikTok recently. I've seen a great, it's been a fun process. Again, it goes back to that enjoyable. I started TikTok to enjoy the platform, but it was also to understand. With my class, again, when I was in the UAE, became obsessed with this Charlie D'Amelio. Who's this? So I went through that process again, is to see like, oh, what can I do to try and bring in whatever she's doing to make my children more engaged. But it helps me understand the platform so that perhaps if the class are mentioning a certain trend, or there's been times where they've sung a song that's come from TikTok and I know what the next line is going to be on that song. And I'm like, yep, no, not that one. Yeah, we'll skip on. Do you know what I mean? It's just not that everyone needs to be on TikTok or be on YouTube, but it does help you understand something when you're able to use it effectively. I suppose it goes back to that, if you're able to teach someone else how to use something, going up to the higher taxonomy, then you have a full understanding of what it is. So, there's an ever-changing world, and children before us will know how to use the platforms, but making sure that we're able to understand them is important, and that only really happens through using them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think one of the things my own kids find very kind of scary is that when they start, because I'm always doing things on social for my job with Teach Middle East, they're always like, Mom, how do you know this? And how do you know that? Because I try to keep abreast of what's happening online. Has creating content helped you career-wise, though, with any career moves?
I would say yes and no. I think part of the process for me is I do like to separate the two. I think the more I merge the two together, the less I enjoy it. So as I create more content, if I'm creating loads of videos as part of, let's talk about online learning, for example. All of a sudden, every teacher became a YouTuber. Whether they knew it or not, whether they liked it or not, every teacher became a YouTuber. And that for me was a huge mental shift. And I wasn't too keen on that. So going back to your original question, it's a challenge to be honest. So yeah, just
Yeah, that's not one thing. Because some people say, oh, okay, you know, it's helped me with my public speaking and it's helped me to become more confident. And then I was able to apply for promotions and I was able to do different things. So creating content does have its advantages for people, but you use your content creation differently then.
To a degree. I think I'm overlooking the way that it's helped me in some ways. I would say that it's helped me develop certain skills, which has made me more employable. So, for example, video editing. I wouldn't have had that skill without YouTube. And as a result, I know that if I like sports and things like that. So those are the typical ECAs that I usually run. But if I was asked to do a video editing or graphic design through Canva ECA, then I've developed those skills by having that understanding of using those platforms too. It's been nice in some ways because I've been able to help my school out with marketing. Not significantly, they've got a good marketing team, to be fair to them, but I've been able to share some of the things that I understand through growing on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. You learn lots of things as part of that process. So it's been nice to be able to help out the marketing team in terms of new things and new features that they can potentially use.
Yeah. So here's my thing, right? So as a teacher, I'm not as young as you by any stretch. And there are teachers in my age bracket who are thinking, okay, I love this content creation thing, but I don't know where to start. There's TikTok, there's YouTube, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's Twitter. Where do I start? How do I know which platform is right for me? Do you have any kind of formula or any test or any advice for people who are confused by the plethora of platforms that are available?
I have a formula that can help with the easing of content creation when you're busy. But in terms of where to start, it's which ones you prefer, because the ones that you enjoy observing the most are the ones that you're most likely to resonate with and be able to create the best content for. In terms of myself, I know that the easiest one to create content for is Instagram, because it's mainly photo based. I mean, even I would say, to be fair, even easier than that would be Twitter. I find Twitter to be a slightly different social media for a different purpose. But to be fair, that would be the easiest one to engage with other people, and it can create some genuine connections to help support you. I always look at Twitter as a way of engaging with other educators rather than social media growth. If you're looking to get into content creation, Instagram would be the easiest avenue, and because it's picture based and you can create graphics and all those sorts of things. From there, short form video is currently where the world is going. Lower retention rates and things like that drive that popularity. So from there, you do have TikTok. Lots of people enjoy the relatability with TikTok, and that's where my formula for easy content creation starts. Is that I'll create a video on TikTok, and then this is like a gem of a secret. I'll create a video on TikTok. and then I'll convert that to something without the watermarks, share it to Instagram Reels, Twitter, YouTube Shorts, and then from there, tag that onto Pinterest. And then you can also you can repurpose content basically. So repurpose, so start with one you enjoy and then repurpose based on whatever you think you'd like to go into from there. And it is a trial and error thing, absolutely. I've not become someone who understands, I can't say I'm an expert at all. No, someone who understands these platforms overnight. It's been a big trial and error thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in terms of what type of content to create, so let's say they choose a platform. Sorry, they choose Twitter. I know you talked about repurposing, but can you put the same content everywhere?
To a degree. Sometimes I'm still going through that trial and error period. It depends again what the content is. Twitter is mainly text-based and emotive. Yes and no. You can do that with the TikTok hack to Instagram and YouTube. And although you can share it to other platforms, yes and no, but it does help with the balancing out. If I were a perfect creator, I don't have the time for that, then I would be really thinking about how I'm going to tailor a message to individual platforms. But yeah, don't have the time for that. That is where the full-time teacher job thing does hit a bit of a cutoff. So that's where I need to think about, okay, how I'm going to maximize my opportunity to share new ideas with other educators while also having a short time period. And that is one way that I do that.
Yeah. Where is it going? Teaching or content creation? What does the future look like, Thomas? Yes. So what does the future look like, Thomas? Content creation or education?
So I would say for me, it's in the classroom. I enjoy being in the classroom more than anything. It's being in front of the class. It's something completely different, and that's what I enjoy. Do I enjoy the administrative side of teaching? Not really. Of course, giving feedback is really important. Lots of written marking is something that I find quite onerous at times, but I want to lead a life where I'm doing more of what I enjoy. I really enjoy content creation and I really enjoy being in the classroom teaching. So it's finding that balance of, especially here in the Middle East, being able to teach in the classroom while also doing less admin stuff, essentially. So that's the challenge for me in the future. I'm at a place at the moment where things continue to grow and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, which is really important. But I do also know that there is a limit and there's only so many plates that I can spin.
Yeah.
So
if you had to choose one, which would you choose?
That's a really good question that I've never thought about because both have always been balanced. I think I would go for being able to do something in the classroom that is maybe content related. That's a cool avenue, isn't it? No, sort of.
You just worked your way out of that so neatly. You have to choose one. Which would you choose?
There's the answer. I would do some sort of CPD that's related to supporting children with future-proofed education, whether that's through content creation or whether that's through further workshops and things like that, because I do enjoy being in front of classrooms and children and just having that opportunity to share knowledge and help children whilst also being silly.
No. I get it. So I think you'll try and merge the two somehow, but really edging the winner, edging out there is teaching, I think, from the sounds of things. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. I just enjoy it's in the classroom that I enjoy the most, if that makes sense.
No,
There would be
totally.
there would always be a split. There would always be a split of teaching and content creation. Yeah.
Wow.
I suppose,
It's a tough one for you. I see that.
yeah, I'm at a stage at the moment where that is a question that I'm asking. But it's just something that I'm not 100% sure myself, to be honest. It's something, yeah, that I'm yet to completely consider. It's quite a challenging hypothetical question, but it's a fair and good one to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll watch this space and see where the career goes. And talking about watch this space, where can people find you as we wind down this podcast? People want to learn more about Thomas and they want to watch some of your videos or connect with you on TikTok or LinkedIn or Twitter or all the various platforms that you're on. How can they connect?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm at Thomas Blakemore on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And then I've just started blogging and have a really substantial website called teachtraveltriumph.com, where you can find all sorts of different videos and informative blogs too.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Thomas, for being my
Thanks
guest
very
on the
much.
podcast. I really hope people learned something from you. I'm sure I certainly have. And I think what we will do as well is we will try to see how we can connect at some point in a live event where people can interface with you and ask you questions about your content creation journey and really see how they themselves can become content creators. I'm a big proponent. I think all teachers should try and create some kind of content. If it's even writing an article, it just helps them to get their knowledge out there and shared. The audience size definitely does not matter. I think once you have something substantial to say and you are saying it from a place of sharing and caring, people will resonate with it and it will definitely help somebody. Thank you again, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.